Hello everyone. Today we're going to be tackling the 2020 Math Paper 1. This will be question 1. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't make the video too long, as always. So, question 1, solve for x. Most paper 1 start with solve for x. So, going to the exam, this is definitely going to be your first question. Not this exact one, obviously. But if you've done enough papers, you start to see a pattern, and the first one is solve x. So in the 2021, the first question is x squared minus 6x equals to 0. If you're writing the exam, there should be, and you have enough preparation, there should be easy 2 marks. This whole question is worth all 22 marks. So there should be easy 22 marks. Well, if you prepared well. Okay. And if you haven't prepared well, this is why you're watching the video. Okay. So, like I said, x squared minus 6x equals to 0. What we're going to do first, we're going to be taking out x as a common factor. And at the stage of grade 12, this should be very easy for you. So we'll take x out. We'll take x out as a common factor. I didn't want practice. Okay. We'll take x out as a common factor, so we're left with x minus 6. There we go. Excuse the horrible handwriting, as usual. Equals to 0. And then from here, we now have two numbers multiplying by each other that equals to 0. So our first number will be x, and our second number will be x minus 6. And we would make both of them equal to 0, since one of them has to be 0. And then in our first case, we can't simplify any further, so therefore x equals to 0. And in our second case, just write this or, so our examiner can see what we're writing. That was horrible R. Or x minus 0, or x minus 6 equals to 0. So we add 6 on both sides. We are left with x equals to 6. Pretty standard, pretty easy. And that's your answer. So we have x equals to 0, x equals to 6. You can, obviously, you should be checking for both to be a solution. So you can substitute x equals to 0 on both sides. So it will be 0 squared minus 6 times 0, which obviously is 0. And you substitute 6 back into your original, you should get the right answer. And that's 2 marks for you. And let's continue. Okay, 1.1.2. We are given x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals to 0. And we have this lovely int over here, corrected 2 decimal places. And of course, when we see this over here, we can go straight into our quadratic formula, so we don't have to still try and factorize. You could try, and then you can see you can end up not getting it at all. So we can go straight into our quadratic formula, minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. I should literally find a better way of doing this, maybe get a picture or something. Yeah, and then we substitute. Remember, let me just write on the side here. So our a value is then 1 because of x squared. Our b value is 10, and our c value is 8. Hope you can see that. So we substitute this in. So x equals to minus 10 plus minus square root of 10 squared of 10 squared. Oh man, for a value is 1, c value is 8, all over to 1 by 1. Okay, so then we have 2 answers here. So our first one is going to be x. Can make a little subscript there, plus, what's this x, I guess. So x equals to, and so when you type into calculator, you first add a plus, you get your answer, write your answer down. Second one, you put a minus, and then you write your answer down. So your answer should be x equals to negative 0, and remember you are correct into two decimal places, so it's 0.88. See why your calculator is so important. Can't write the exam without a calculator. Or x equals to negative 9 point, correct into two decimal places again, 1.2, and that's it. You would get 3 marks, 1 mark for substituting properly into your quadratic equation, and then 1 mark each for your answers. Nice easy 3 marks. Right though. And we'll continue with the third question, and we have an inequality. Another work you should be familiar with, a nice easy 3 marks. And you know, with inequalities, your first thought should be your critical values. So that will be CV, and then simple way of finding your critical values, since there wasn't any simplifying required before this, we have our lovely two factors that are, or two numbers that are being multiplied by each other, and we know that this result should be less than 0. So we need to find all numbers for which, when we multiply these two numbers together, should be less than 0. So our first critical value, we're going to be using our first number, which in this case is 1 minus x, and then in our second case we'll be working with x plus 2. So we would have 1 minus x is less than 0, and in our second case we will be having we'll have x plus 2 is less than 0. So in our first case, we can take our 1 over, or minus 1 on both sides, so we're left with minus x is less than minus 1, and then we divide both sides by minus 1. But remember, there's a special rule with inequalities. When we divide by minus 1 or a negative, we then flip our inequality, so this becomes x more than instead of the less than, and then minus 1 divided by minus 1 is just 1. So we're going to have x is more than 1, or actually, well, our inequality will be equal, because it's a point that we're dealing with. So that's where our inequality will change value, so it would actually be x is equal to 1. So our first critical value is in fact x equal to 1. Now I know you'll be asking, why did I then start with the inequality where I could have just started with an equal? So for example, it would have been 1 minus x equals to 1, and it would work out to the same thing, but we will use this more than 1 will show up in our little graph that we will draw for ourselves, which makes it much more easier to visualize and answer. And then in our second case, we have x plus 2 is less than 0, and then we just minus 2 on both sides, which is then x is less than minus 2, and then we don't need to do anything further on there. So now that we have, oh, and of course this is a single point, so it will be then be where x is equal to minus 2. We will then graph this. So we have our straight line, and we put our little markers here. The least of the two is minus 2, because minus 2 is obviously less than 1, so we have minus 2 over there, and our second one is at 1. And then this of course goes to negative infinity, this goes to positive infinity. We have to now determine where every single number for x will then give us a negative, so this is less than 0. So this is where our little inequality over here is so useful. So we know that it's going to be where x is less than minus 2, so it will be everything on this side, so everything excluding minus 2, right? Because if in our question it doesn't say include, or it says excluding the number. So you know, if this had a sign over there, we would include minus 2, but since it isn't, we won't include it, so we use a open circle. And then the same with 1, so it's everything greater than 1, so it's all the numbers on this side of our number line. And that's your little graph. And then our final answer is where x is less than, actually we have it here actually, but I think just a better way to write it for our marker, so we can be very explicit with our answer. So everything where x is less than minus 2, and where x is greater than, oops, my bad, yeah, x is greater than 1. Yeah, so everything there. So our result of our inequality, everything on all the numbers, all the x values that we will use will result in a negative here. It will be a positive here in between this range, and will be a negative on this side. And that's pretty much it. So number 1.1.4, we have the square root of x plus 18 equals to x minus 2. This is a good 5 marks for you. And the first thing we do is we notice that there's a square root. We want to get rid of the square root because it makes it much easier to work with. So our first step will be squaring both sides. And when we square both sides, we are left with, it's right here, x plus 18. We square on both sides, equals to x minus 2 square root. Okay, the square root cancels with the square, so we're left with x plus 18 on the side. Nothing too complicated over here. And of course on this side we're going to be evaluating. You should be able to evaluate well at this stage, but you know, it's rather take your time, be careful. Don't want to be rushing through steps and then you end up making a simple mistake. But it would be x squared, because we multiply x by itself. We would then take x multiplied by minus 2 multiplied by 2, which is negative 4x. And then of course minus 2 multiplied by itself is plus 4. Now if you're uncomfortable with doing it in one step, you are more than welcome to go x minus 2, x minus 2, and then evaluating, you know, the old FOIL method. So x times x is x squared, x times minus 2 is minus 2x, and then we do that one and then that one. So we're left with minus 2x, and then minus 2 is, I shouldn't say minus 2, I said minus 2, I should say minus 2 multiplied by minus 2 is positive 4, and then we add like terms, which we end up with that over there. But you are in Matric, so you should know all of that. If you don't, you have some time to prepare for the exam. Okay, and so now we will add like terms. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these terms over to that side. Yeah, the highest power is the 2, so we're going to leave the x squared on the side. You can take it over, but you're going to be having to then divide by minus 1, and it's adding more steps. And remember, time is important. It's not unlimited amount of time you can write the exam. It's only 3 hours. So then we have x squared. Let me do extra steps so you don't get too confused. So we're going to leave all these terms on the side. Plus 4. And then we're going to take our x over, so it becomes negative x. And we're going to take our 18 over, so it becomes negative 18. And then now we add like terms. So we have x squared. There's no other squared terms. There are two x values, so it's minus 4x minus x. So you know the same sign, so we're going to be adding them, so it becomes minus 5x. And we have plus 4 minus 18 becomes minus, and the difference between them is 14. Right there. Then we factorize, because we have this in this lovely quadratic form. So this becomes x and x. With 14 we have 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Oh, that should be a green light already, because we can see the difference between 7 and 2 is 5, and that's what we want. So we're gonna have 7 here, we're gonna have 2 here, and then the bigger one should be negative, because the result, the middle one, is negative. And then on this side we can see that this is not a positive, so then not the same, so there should be a positive 2. Yeah, fits perfectly. You can always multiply them out and see that you end up with the same thing. And then of course this is just the same as the first question where we have two numbers multiplying by each other to give us 0. So we have x plus 2 equals to 0, or x minus 7 equals to 0. We add minus 2 on both sides, gives us x equals to minus 2, and on this case we have x equals to 7. And if you ended it here, you would get 4 out of 5. So the marks would be 1 for squaring both sides. I believe it is let me check this out. You will get 1 mark here, 1 mark there, and then 1 mark for your method in between. And then, but you can see the total mark is 5. And of course, this is why you have to check both your answers. And when you put in 7, if you type this in your calculator, and you put 7 here, it becomes 7 plus 18 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. 7 minus 2 is also 5, so therefore 7 is a valid number. And if you do the same with minus 2, if you put minus 2 there, it becomes 16. Square root of 16 is 4, and then we have minus 2 is minus 4. So we have 4 and minus 4, and 4 and minus 4 is not equal. Therefore, this is not a solution. And then, of course, once you say this is not a valid solution, you will get your 5th mark. And that's how you get an easy 5 out of 5. Okay, then we have our 1.2, which is, surprise, surprise, simultaneous equations. X plus y equals 3, and 2x squared plus 4xy minus y equals 15. So yeah, let's go. So this would be our first equation. I'll just mark this as 1, and this one over here will be our second equation. My recommendations for most questions, but more specifically for simultaneous equation, is to write out what you are doing. Like make it explicit to your marker what you are doing. So now that we labeled this is equation 1, this is equation 2, what we can do is we can even make an equation 3 by making x or y the subject of the formula. Okay, I'll go with y. Let's make y the subject of the formula. So it will be y equals to 3 minus x. I got that from equation 1. And then we will substitute, let's call this equation 3 now. We will substitute equation 3 into equation 2. So we will be left with 2x squared and when I say put 3 into 2, we are replacing wherever we see a y with this little expression over here. So there's no y's over in this term. In our next term we have 4x, and then we have a y over there. So we're going to replace or substitute y with 3 minus x, and then over here we just have a y, so we replace that with 3 minus x equals to 15. And then we will just simplify, multiply out our terms. So we may have 2x squared, and then we're going to multiply this out. So this becomes 4 times 3 is 12x, and then we multiply the same term with the a minus x, so it becomes minus 4x squared, and that's it. And then we go to our next term. We just multiply the negative sign in, so it becomes minus 3, and negative times negative is a positive, becomes x, and then this is still equal to 15. I think to speed it up, we can bring our 15 over so long, so it becomes negative 15 equals to 0. Okay, once we do that, we just add like terms. So there are two terms to the squared, to the power of 2. So it's minus 4 and 2. and then that becomes 2 minus 4, which is just minus 2x squared. We then have plus 12x and x, so that becomes plus 13x, and we have the minus 3 and the minus 15 becomes minus 18, and that equals to 0. You can factorize from here, but of course our x squared is negative, so to help us out a bit, we'll divide the whole thing by minus 1. So this becomes 2x squared minus 30 now, because we're dividing by minus 1, and this becomes plus 18 equals to 0. Then we factorize, so this becomes, we have the 2x now, so one will be 2x and the other one will be 1x, or just x. We're working with 18 here, so we have we can over here, we have 1 and 18. Of course we're working with 2 now, so it becomes a little of more steps to look into, but we have 1 and 18, we have 2 and 9, because 2 times 9 is 18, and then this is also looking promising. So 2 and 9 multiplied by 2, so 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 9 is exactly what we need. So we're going to be multiplying the 2 with the 2, so this the 2 will be over here, and of course the 9 will be over there. The bigger one, actually both of them has to be negative, because we're adding it up together, and of course negative times negative equals positive, so it'll be minus 9 minus 2, and of course you should always check your answer by multiplying them out again and seeing if they get the same thing. If you don't, you made a mistake. Okay, let me continue writing over here. So then we have 2x minus 9 equals to 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So we just solve for them as normal, so it becomes 2x equals to 9, or x, I can actually just finish this one, but this becomes 2, we add 2 on both sides, so it becomes x plus equals 2. And over here we have divide both sides by 2, so we have x equals to 9 over 2. So yeah, so we have 2 x values, which is a good sign since we have a square. Normally when we have a square, we're going to have multiple values or multiple answers, and then this is our x values. So we're going to, using our x values, we can then get our y values. And then we can take this and substitute back into our equation 1. So we will have x plus y equals 3. And then when x is 9 over 2, so it becomes 9 over 2 plus y equals 3. This is just equation 1. It's just this over here. And then we simplify, so it becomes y equals to 3 minus 9 over 2, which you can just type in your calculator since it's all numbers, which will give you negative 3 over 2. And then we do the same thing with our x value of 2, so it becomes 2 plus y equals to 3, and then you take the 2 over, so it becomes 3 minus 2, which is just y equals to 1. And those are your answers. So when x is equal to 9 over 2, y is equal to minus 3 over 2, and when x is equal to 2, y is equal to 1. That's it. And then moving on to our last question of question 1, which is a bit of an odd one. You don't normally see this type of question in the exam, but this is kind of just so you don't get the full 22 out of 22. They add, which is just 3 out of the 22. But of course, you want to get every single mark that you can. And so we have this question. They say if n is the largest integer, which value? Okay, little pause over there. Integer. I'm sure you know what an integer is. I think they taught it to you like in grade 8. Integer is all your whole numbers, including the negatives as well. And they say, okay, so which is the largest one? Largest, maximum, the biggest, largest. Okay. So for which n to the power of 200 is less than 5 to the power of 300, determine the value of n. Let's start with like the easiest and simplest method, what I think, which looks so nice and clean, which will just be, because you need to know how to use exponents. I think this is kind of just what they're asking. So n to the power of 200 is less than 5 to the power of 300. And using our manipulation with exponents, one thing that we can do is you can take, you know how before we square both sides, so you can also square root both sides, but instead of using the square root, we're going to use the 200th root on both sides. So what you'll be basically doing is you're doing this, but instead of to the square, you're doing to the 200th. And we're going to do this on both sides. So, I ran out of space there. But let me just rewrite it. So you're going to do square root of 200 square root of n to the 200 is less than, I don't even know what it's called. The 200th root, I believe, of 5 to the 300. And these cancel out perfectly. So you're left with n is less than. And then, of course, in a perfect world, you could have typed this in your calculator, but I'm pretty sure your calculator is going to break if you do that. So probably don't do that. So what you can do is simplify this. So this will become simplified to 5 to the 300 divided by 200. That's just simply your rules of exponents right there. And of course, this simplifies even further. So it becomes n less than 5. What's 300 divided by 200? That is just simply 3 over 2. And your calculator is more than able to do this over here. So this becomes n less than, this becomes 11,18033, so on, so on, so on. But of course, our question is saying they want the largest integer, which is then just n equal to 11, because that's our largest whole number, and that's it. Now that is probably the cleanest way of doing it. Just the square root, 200th root on both sides, and then simplifying it. Of course, this isn't very easy to see. If you want to do a more systematic breakdown of this answer, I would then suggest introducing logs on both sides, which is, I guess, fine. So let me just do that quick. If not, I'm probably, if this video is too long, I'll probably just cut down. But it would be something like, if you introduce logs on both sides, it would be log. It would be the log of n to the 200 is less than log of 5 to the 300. And then using our roots for log, we can move our exponent to the front, so it becomes 200 log n is less than 300 log 5. We then want to get our n by itself. We want to make it the subject of the formula. We divide both sides by 200 and then undo our log. But yeah, let's just take it a little step by step. So it becomes log n is less than 300 log 5 all divided by 200. And then we undo our log, so it becomes, remember log normally is a base of 10, so it becomes n, becomes n is less than 10. Do you know where the 10 came from? It came from that, the normal log. So it becomes 10 all to the power of this over here, which we can write as 3 over 2. Of course, look here, the same 3 over 2 that's here. It's this one here, 3 over 2 log 5. And this is all numbers that you can write into a calculator, which will give you this exact same value, which is in less than 11,18033, and then you do the same conclusion, which is then the largest value of n is, or the largest integer value of n is then equal to 11. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.